Hello and welcome to an album a day 327, going through my vinyl collection one at a time. We're into the CD range of my media extravaganza. It's the best way I can describe it in the moment. But today we're going to a classical CD, one that I recently picked up because I wanted to cover it on the Hask and Cast podcast. That'll be coming out next year. I've already recorded it, and it's quite a journey. I'm talking about Antonio Vivaldi's The Four Seasons. This may surprise you, but I've never actually listened to the entire thing all the way through. I've heard bits and pieces of it. Obviously, anybody who grew up on Looney Tunes knows a portion of this, whether you know it or not, but frequently used in Bugs Bunny cartoons. Probably some others as well. I'm pretty sure it was used in Ren and Stimpy, but this is the version that I did it off of. Very nicely recorded version. I won't go into what I think of it too much, except to say that I was surprised by some of it, and it's well worth listening to. So it is going to be over the course of 2 episodes sometime next year, and there's that. But for this CD, this one came out in '98. There are many versions of this out there, but on Discogs, this particular one is showing as 1998. Again, there's the cover. I love the design of this. It really takes me back to what I think it would have been like in those times. I think if I remember right, this was 1875, or was that the next one I covered? I'm not sure. I think this was the late 1800s if I remember right, but just thinking about like what the world looked like at that time, or might have looked at this time, this is kind of a good representation of what I imagine. So I like that. Love the color, that slightly brownish light, tan. We also get that on the back cover as well. Very nice. This is a fantastic series, by the way. These Penguin releases, I've got a few of them, and they're really, really well done. So on the inside, we get, obviously, you get the track list. You also get that on the back, but you get a little bit of the history, which is always nice, especially with classical music, because if you're like me, you don't care as much, but for a lot of people, it's interesting to know the stuff behind it. For me, I'm just like, when was it done? Like, just give me a time frame of when this was put together so I can kind of get it into my head where we were musically around that time. So thinking like 1875, if that was this one, and it could have been another one that I covered. No, he was 1678 to 1741. So you're talking like pre-Beethoven. And so it's interesting to think then about like what's done in this, what the performances are, how far they could push the instruments, or how far they did push the instruments, how much they knew or experimented with what ended up in here versus what we can do now, or what we could do during Beethoven's time or Edward Grieg's time, which would have been the 1875 when I also covered the Peter Gitt Suite. We'll talk about that one in another episode. But thinking, gosh, 1741 was when he died. So this was written before then. So you're talking a long time ago. And thinking about it in those terms, it's like, it's hard to imagine how far people could push instruments. It's also weird to think about how the performances would have been, because you're talking no microphones, no electricity, no speaker system. Wherever you sat in the theater would have been a really important thing, because if they're playing a quiet passage, how well could you hear it from wherever you were? I'm sure they designed theaters as best they could on acoustics and what they knew of them then, but how much did they really know back then? Couldn't have been that much. So really interesting just to think about the dynamic of how music would have been experienced then as opposed to the way it is now. Here's the CD, very simple. I would say elegant, no designs, no cartoons, no picture of the city or anything. Just very nice, simple silver lettering on black. Really like that, actually. And then nothing really much on behind the CD part right there. Overall, yeah, I would say this is worth listening to. I feel kind of bad that it took me 53 years to get to take the time, and I take responsibility for that. It's not circumstance. I didn't listen to it. But I feel bad that I took 53 years to really sit down and listen to the whole thing. It's worth that. I won't, like I said, I won't go into my thoughts on that. I dig into that very deeply into the podcast. But yeah, keep an eye on Hask and Cast podcast next year for this to come out. It'll be in 2 parts. I cover the first 2 symphonies, or the first 2 concertos in the first part, and then the second 2 concertos in the other part. The first episode of the month is my classical episode, unless I have an interview that I have to squeeze in before then. But other than that, first Wednesday of the month will be my classical music episode. And I'm having a lot of fun doing those, because like this, I'm digging into pieces that I've only known bits and pieces of. Some I didn't know at all. Some I thought I knew and found out I really didn't. There's been some really good surprises. So it's been a fun thing to do, and I think I'll keep doing that as I go through my classical collection or pick out pieces I want to cover and add those to my collection, whether it be physically or digitally. But yeah, really good stuff. Check it out. Antonio Vivaldi, The Four Seasons. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Also, check out my soundtrack that I released today for Player. That will be coming out in about an hour or so from the time that I release this video. I've just got to do all the website stuff and set it up, but it's already uploaded, ready to release. It was an interesting short film that I did for a 48-hour film challenge with the Phoenix Independent Filmmakers Group some years ago, at the same time that I was doing the score for the movie Short Term. In fact, the day that I turned in the score, went down to set to hand them the drive with all the music on it, I went straight from there to the set of Short Term to do the filming of that. And I was doing on-set sound for that. The first time I'd ever done it. It was 2 locations, inside a house and outside a house. So it was really simple. And in fact, I think all the outside the house stuff, I don't think we did audio. I think, yeah, I don't think we did. I think we just did Foley for the footsteps and for the car. But yeah, all the inside stuff, it was a very emotional thing. Unfortunately, the filmmaker never released that one. Player is out there. I'll have to check and see if it's on my YouTube page. I can't remember. If it is, I'll link it in the Facebook post. But yeah, that's coming out today. And we'll see you tomorrow for another episode of An Album a Day. Cheers.